I want the fishing industry to be recognized for the good things that it does. And so my program that I've chosen to focus on at the Center for Coastal Studies has to do with derelict fishing gear, or abandoned, lost, or discarded fishing gear.
It's, you name it, I mean, tires. I remember the year we did it here, I got an old, what was left an old torpedo, tow hawser, chain link fence, old lobster traps, old gill nets, old rope, cable. I haven't gotten a dead body yet or a skeleton, so but that's, you name it. I mean, if you can think of that, whatever falls off a boat or washes out to sea, you're gonna get.
If you think of a tumbleweed rolling through the desert, it picks up stuff, it moves. I mean, they have some, I'd say, up on the South Shore, north of like Plymouth, Marshfield, Cohasset, that are, you know, as big as this room, and they have buoys on them so that they don't go near it. You go further north to Maine, they're as big as this building.
Do we get a parts of a car? I don't know if I get a part of a car before.
Meet Laura Ludwig. Laura heads up the Center for Coastal Studies Marine Debris and Plastics program. The work she does is hard, arduous, and oftentimes dangerous.
Based on certain surveys, we understand that there's maybe between 5 and 15% of gear gets lost annually per person, per fisherman.
Over the course of 4 seasons, she and her crew have recovered 85,000 pounds of ghost gear from the ocean's floor. She seems to come at her job with more energy, positivity, and grit than one might easily come up with on a February morning when the wind is blowing bitter cold out in Cape Cod Bay. But nonetheless, that's where you'll see Laura Ludwig and her fishermen as they head out to sea. A young Laura didn't seem destined for a life of protecting the ocean.
As a little kid, I loved being outdoors. I was always in the woods. I had horses, turkeys, rabbits, and I was just an outdoor person. And that was in northern Vermont. It's what we did. We played in the woods and we swam in the streams and we pulled leeches off of our legs.
But head to the sea she did. Working as a fisherman in Maine before moving to the Cape, Ludwig has built a strong relationship to both the ocean and those making their living off of it.
So I coined a phrase about 20 years ago that said, "No fisherman worth his salt would choose to lose his gear."
Ludwig has a deep and abiding respect for the fishermen she works with.
These are relationships that are really important to me, and I am not interested in just coming up. My colleague and co-PI, Owen Nichols, had a really great way of putting it the other day, and I'll botch it, but he was basically saying, I don't come up with harebrained ideas and then rent a boat and go out and test it. I'm interested in the fishermen's ideas and testing their ideas. Based on certain surveys, we understand that there's maybe between 5 and 15% of gear gets lost annually per person, per fisherman. You can understand that there might be a lot of plastic at the bottom of the ocean that was originally fishing gear. It was either a net or a trap or a rope or a buoy.
Lost gear fouls the marine environment, but fishermen feel the impact too.
They would much prefer to get it back because it's very expensive, and they also have, in my experience, a much greater sensibility about the impacts of that gear on the environment. They don't want to pollute the system that is providing their income and their livelihood and their enjoyment, frankly.
The gear that Laura is grabbing, though, is primarily the gear without buoys, the buoyless gear. So when the buoys have been lost and the gear rests on the ocean floor, that's the gear that Laura has been targeting with her team. They grapple or they tow a hook across the ocean floor. They can grab the lines connecting the traps and they bring that up. And so that's the gear that we've asked them to focus on. The Center for Coastal Studies out here on the tip of Cape Cod has always worked very closely with the community. The community includes fishermen and their folks. Laura and Owen Nichols have been very proactive. They have good relationships with the fishing community, and they're able to secure federal funding to work on this project, and a lot of those funds went directly to the participating fishermen. And that was especially helpful because some of those fishermen were essentially taken off the water by the whale closure. So they weren't able to fish in the winter. They were able to participate in this and get some revenues from it.
There are less than 400 North Atlantic right whales left on the planet. These massive 60-ton creatures migrate yearly to their feeding grounds in Cape Cod Bay between the months of December and May.
Because there is such a concern about the critical habitat of a right whale, there's a lot of attention placed on Cape Cod Bay in terms of marine debris, pollution, climate change impacts such as warming waters. How is that affecting the prey of the right whale? How does it affect their ability to, bring their young here? All of that. It's really complicated. It is an ecosystem after all.
The Department of Marine Fisheries issued restrictions to protect these endangered whales by lowering boat speeds to 10 knots and preventing trap gear from being set between February and May.
Yeah, so marine debris it's in our top 5 of issues and concerns. We want to get all of it out of the water. We're working with individual organizations, National Fish and Wildlife, and the NOAA Marine Debris Program. We've done, coast cleanups. Fishermen are working with the Center for Coastal Studies.
I consider myself really conservation minded. Most fishermen are, otherwise you wouldn't have a fishery. So a lot of us when I go fishing every day, I usually bring home more garbage with me, whether it comes off the bottom. Now, I'll get stuff wrapped on one of my lines, but part of an old plastic bag. You'll get a red Solo cup, cracked up. A lot of tides or storm get stuck into a lobster pot. Like I said, balloons, pieces of rope.
The Division of Marine Fisheries conducted a study in 2012 to look at the impact of abandoned traps over time.
It's been found by some of Laura's work that some of these traps, even 3, 4, 5, 6 years, could continue to fish because those ghost panels haven't opened up yet.
And when the lobster fishery heard about this, the estimate based on the numbers that were obtained during that study, the estimate was that approximately 8% of the potential caught lobsters died in those traps. In other words, you might catch 1,000 lobsters in your course of your harvesting year, and 80 of them that you could have caught died in these traps.
Part of what Laura is trying to determine, she's looking at the fate of the gear, the density of the gear. From that, we might be able to extrapolate some estimates of the total amount of gear in local waters. Lobstermen do lose gear on occasion. Those who fish single traps can lose up to 20% of the gear per year. But those who fish multiple part strings, we call them trawls, they tend to lose less than 5%.
And we're not doing this for enforcement purposes. You asked me, what do I hope to achieve? I want to clean up the ocean. That's basically it for me. But it's all useful information. And one of the things that could come out of the work that we do is a stronger look at recreational lobster fishing. They are set in places that they then lose because they don't have enough rope on them, and the trap is so lightweight that a buoy attached to it will just kind of move it along as the tide comes up. So there's a lot of, non-commercial fishing gear that we're recovering. The point is, it's not correlated to the impact of the lost fishing gear, the whale entanglement, the pollution, the carbon footprint, nothing. It's all kind of washed underneath the rug, and if we could drain the ocean right now, you'd be appalled. Is it too big to fail? Not in my backyard, it's not.